This week's sponsor is Anchor.fm. In our experience at Podcasters, Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great, and they'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. If you're interested in monetizing your podcast, Anchor sets you up with sponsors with no minimum listenership. What could be easier than that? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. The Chains of Reason podcast, where we link the chains of reason that affects our daily lives in society and culture, including, but not limited to, sports and politics.
Welcome to the Chains of Reason podcast. I am your host, DJ Grand, and I'm here with my brother, Jerry.
Greetings.
And our trusty producer, Ryan.
Hello.
Our episode 7 of this podcast, we're going to be talking about the entitlement culture, especially when it comes to employment or work.
Yes. Now, currently in our current society, it is more of an entitlement when you're not offered a job, you're owed that job. But let's start in the beginning. And I'm going to go to the beginnings of the 1930s, which is the Golden Gate Bridge. That was the newest, biggest thing. Now, first, the hiring process. There was a long line at the base of that bridge because basically...
wasn't that during the Depression? So not very many people had a job?
Correct. That's why they're coming in droves. But some of the qualifications were you had to be a daredevil. You had to climb all the way up there, hunting cables. And you had the people at the bottom of the waiting for the job were hoping for people to fall off and get hurt. Because if they got hurt, they'd be replaced. Now, the owner of who built the Golden Gate Bridge, I forget his name, he was the first one for these safety innovations. He built the net underneath it. I think it was for every $1 million you spent, they expected 100 workers to die, to fall to their death. They only lost 10 as of the Golden Gate Bridge. But if we go into New York and the Empire State Building, that number rose as far as the safety. But again, the Golden Gate Bridge was the first one that offered a safety net. So the standards of working safely now in the 1930s drastically changed from what it was in the 20s and the 1910s. But again, you got hurt. It wasn't really a qualification. If you can go up there and if you didn't like it, go away, next man up. Well, that has quite different from today. Now we got to go back also now. When do you remember the Human Resources Department when you were working? Do you ever remember a Human Resources being in a organization that you worked at?
Well, when I broke my neck, the human resources was not what it is today. It was more of biz. I ran a floor care company, and I would have to submit my bills to them, and that was the human resources. I never, because when I broke my neck in 2003 and stopped working, I never had to deal with the current human resources. To me, they're like unions.
Well, the idea started in the 60s, and the definition is overseeing all things related to managing an organization's human capital. So they were more or less, there was a department put in to train, develop, onboard to the company procedures, follow the papers, make sure they get their taxes, all the basically dot your I's and cross your T's. But it has morphed into what you just said, a corporate union, to where you can't do anything today without human resources. You can't fire somebody for calling or for a no call, no show for coming in drunk. You can't fire them until human resources gives you the okay. They are fearful of getting sued. I mean, I can give you just tons of stories. One would be in 2010 at a healthcare facility where in the union contract, now this was negotiated by the union, the SEIU, and the Human Resources Department of this corporation. You're basically given 12 sick days, vacation days every year. And those days are accumulated one per month. But in the contract, in the code, you had to turn in a 3-day notice so scheduling could be provided and you get someone to fill your spot before you took the days. Now, again, this was sick days / vacation days, personal days. Now, when a person would come to me, they call in sick. Would they get that day paid off?
Not according to the contract. It's not the way it's written because they didn't give the 3-day notice.
Exactly. Well, How do I know I'm not going to be sick? How can I tell you I'm going to be sick? I can't give you notice. I don't know when I'm going to be sick. Well, you don't get that day paid according to how the human resources was written. Now, I stuck to it by the book. Well, it got grieved and went to the human resources. Before it went to grievance, the human resources president said it was poorly written.
That's true.
He wrote it. So therefore, ignore it is what he said. You can't hold them to that. Basically, they can call in 12 times a year, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Is this based on a scare of liability? Because to me, it sounds like he was scared they were going to take that to court and find him liable because he wrote a bad clause.
Basically, what he told me was they'll be rewritten when the next negotiation. But for the time being, this whole thing here was not to be honored, even though it was in black and white.
Because once again, I think he was scared of liability. He was scared of someone taking them to court and saying, "You admitted he wrote it," or then he would be, or the company would be held liable because they wrote a bad clause into the contract.
And again, therefore, you got to have the human resources sign off before you do anything, before you discipline. Verbally discipline an employee, you must have human resources, upper management, basically tell you what to say.
I know this is fiction, but do you think Hank Reardon would have put up with that?
Well, absolutely not. There wouldn't have been a human resources department. Now, Hank Reardon would have been ran out from the media. He would have been just destroyed.
Not in his own company. And no, but it's a different argument. But my point is that it's totally unnecessary. If you treat your employees correctly, like Hank Reardon did, once again, it's fiction, but like Hank Reardon did in Atlas Shrugged, all those employees were loyal to him.
I don't know the specifics, but I'll give you a good modern day example. I don't know if he's Hank Reardon now, but you remember the Papa John pizza owner?
Yeah.
He lost his business because it was a conference call where he used the undreaded N-word, and it was in a context, it was a role-playing context, to where he was trying to role-play with the driver if someone said that to him, a black African-American driver, and the customer used the N-word. Media got a hold of that. He lost that business. I don't know how he lost it. He was bought out, but he's no longer the chairman of the board, and he lost a lot of stuff.
It's a different context because you're talking about a board of directors. You're talking about a company that is on the stock market that has
what if Hank Reardon, what if that would have been on the stock market?
His business was never on the stock market. Yeah. He would never do that. And there's the difference. A single owner can still say, no, we're not going to do this.
How many single owners are on the stock market today?
And see, that's the problem. We now have the essence of the problem. We don't have an individualist, an owner who is for the individual, for his individual brand, his name, that can stand up for what's right or wrong. You also have, that person also has to be moral because he could do some bad things.
It's a good example, but again, Hank Reardon was in a book. All right, I
said it was fiction.
No, correct. But so for Hank Reardon to be in today's society, running that business, I think he'd be on the stock market. He'd have to be.
No, I disagree.
He would be.
There's no sole proprietorships. There's no.
Again,
I think it.
No, there are.
It may be harder, but it's possible.
But there are also ways to where you're, I don't want to say disenfranchised, but you're given roadblocks to where you aren't going to succeed. Someone that's more left wing, more of, they're going to go along the guided path of the yellow brick road. We're not going to hold these regulations on you. I'm using Papa John because that guy lost his
I get your
baby.
point, but let's go to the same book, Atlas Shrugged. Did Dagny Taggart let those roadblocks stop her?
Again, fiction.
True. I know it's fiction. I know. But the point is, someone who is truly motivated, someone who will not let those roadblocks get in their way, will continue to do the right thing regardless of the roadblocks, could overcome what you're saying. And I'm just trying to give you a solution. No, the problem I see is corporate. It's corporatism.
Back in the 50s and 60s, yeah, Dagny wouldn't have. She would have survived too and probably won out, but not today. And that's my whole point of this. It is such change, and it was hard for me because I'll go back to the hiring process. When you wanted a job, you fill application. I'll go back to before the internet. You did it through the mail. You got a call, came in for an interview. If they liked you, you came back for a second. If that one passed, then you had to go for a physical. When you passed the physical, you were hired under a 90-day probation. And that 90-day probation said, if you do anything, we can fire you for any such reason. After that, we can't just get rid of you because Michigan, even though it's an at-will state, we have to write you up and give you a chance to rehab. But once you pass, if you're in the 90 days, they can let you go for anything. Well, today, you hire, it's not just before you even get the job offered. Have you heard of a job shadow? You know what a job shadow means?
No, I've never heard of it before.
All right. If you apply for this position and they are interested in you, before you even take the physical, This would be the second phase. You take the interview, you come back for a second. Hey, we like what we see. Now we want you to follow that. You're going to be a nurse. You're going to follow the nurse around for a day. Oh, you're going to do that work too. We're going to see how you do that work. You're not getting paid. Upon that, we may or may not offer you a letter of a job offer, which you have to sign, and then we go through the drug test and the physical. So this job shadow was just thrown in now. Basically, instead of having the 90-day probation, they're giving you 8 hours to gauge whether you want this person.
It's like an internship.
An 8-hour internship.
And unpaid, too.
Unpaid.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly the same.
there's
Good,
that, you know.
Okay.
good point.
Now, up until, I think this has been going on for about 5 years now. I've done one. I did not take the job after I did that. And when I took my current position, I didn't have to go through a job shadow. But now the company's doing it left and right. Well, you have these nurses' assistants who come in. And
Potential, you mean, right?
Potential, meaning they were interviewed. We liked them. Okay, come on back in and job shadow. They job shadowed. And the highest ranking senior employee that's there, nurse's aide, will give them a tour, tell them what they have to do. They won't really do any physical care because they would be liable for the company if they were hurt a resident. But they do as much as they can without lifting them up or toileting them.
They want to show that they can handle the job. I get it.
They also want to see the attitude coming back. These three were the worst attitude I have ever seen. They just felt like the job was theirs. You could just tell the way they were walking around. You know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Oh, this is going to go. Like they were making their own decisions on how they're going to rearrange things once they started. And they were expecting to start on the next onboarding, which is orientation.
Do you know why they have that mental conclusion? It's a flawed premise. They believe the company is there to employ people, when the truth is the company is there to make money.
Well, this is the first time I experienced this because this is what opened my eyes and want to talk about this. They did the tour, and the aide that gave them the tour and basically has to fill out this form on each person is 0 to 100. If you don't get a 70, you're not going to be offered the job. They got 12. That's how bad it was. Now, when they basically, at the end of the day, was like, you know, okay, ladies, thank you. Hey, you know, if we like you, well, they're being nice. They don't want to come out and say, we're not going to offer you the job. They're trying to say, hey, you know, if we like you, we'll give you a call. You know, I'm going to think about it. They went on this rant. We're calling the EOC. We're calling the civil liberties. We're calling this, you owe us this job. You brought us in here. You have to offer this job.
Once again, it just reinforces what I said. They believe that the company is there to employ people when that's secondary. The company's there to, well, if you have shareholders, it's to make money for the shareholders. But if you don't, if it's a private company, you're there to make money. Without the money, there is no employees.
See, and that's the whole thing. I completely agree. They don't see it that way. They see it as even some of the employees that are there now, and this is throughout the healthcare industry. First of all, they don't make a lot of money. When they watch these midnight ads about the healthcare industry, oh, come make a lot of money, and they make them look like they're nurses and doctors in the TV commercial. And it says nurses assistants. That isn't close to what it is. When they get in there and they have to actually do this work, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's pretty low. You would think that someone that has to do this would get, especially if the company's bringing in $3 billion annually. We're talking a company it's in 3 states. It's just in the Midwest. You got national companies that bring in a lot more. But when you get all the expenses, the revenue you bring in, the current building that I'm at right now is basically, as of right now, this is the end of last month, made $13 million revenue. Now, when I was told that, that's great, but what did we spend? Now, that's labor and all that stuff. And when you put everything into it, there isn't much to go around for the nurses' aides. And if you gave the nurses' aides a $60,000 salary, do you really think they're going to show up the next day and work hard?
They think they're entitled to it.
It's the work ethic. Yes, correct. Back in the day, there was an ethic that you were proud. You had pride. Nowadays, no, I mean, this is today. It's not about what I can do, what I'm supposed to do. It's just give me my money. I want to do as least amount of work as possible. And by the way, how dare you tell me that I have to do this? But don't you dare mess up my paycheck. I want those full hours. Our census is down. You got to go home today. You got to leave it an hour early because our census isn't up. And they just go off. You owe me that money. You owe me that 8 hours. I rely on that 8 hours for my bills. I have to pay how do you think I can pay my bills if I don't get my 8 hours?
And they wouldn't excel to try to be a nurse.
Well, see,
That's exactly it, too. I was just thinking of that. Once again, it's a flawed premise. Those are entry-level positions, which means you should grow just like fast food.
Up
exactly. You should grow to
an aid, to a nurse, to a...
I agree. To whatever, to a doctor, whatever you want, whatever your ambition is.
The company that I currently work at, which I'm going to remain silent, they offer something that no other company does, which is free college tuition through Purdue University, through Purdue Global University. They even brought to my attention that you can, and there's no limit, not just healthcare. And the good thing about it, when you go there, you get your degree, you don't have to stay at the company. So they're trying to get these people, aides, everyone, to better their lives. That's the whole point. They really do spoil these employees, trying to get them better. However, that's not what they want. They want to do absolutely nothing and get paid. But I can give you horror stories of workers right now in this building that basically, if you were asked them to clean up a puddle of urine, that ain't my job. Go get this person. And this person basically says, that's not my job. It's in the carpet. Go get that person. And they will be passed on. Oh, but don't get my paycheck wrong. What do you mean? And the ironic part, I don't know if this is ironic. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. When I was telling you about how I want to send them home now because our census is down. Well, a week goes by. We got a full census. So they can use their full 8 hours. They come at 12 noon. I got to go home. I'm not feeling good. Or I got to go home. My mom's sick. Or I got to go home. My grandma's sick. I'll get tons of excuses. But it's okay for you to? I thought you had bills to pay. You follow me? And when I say no, you can't go home. How dare you? You treat me like a dog, like an animal. You can't do that. I have to go. I mean, it's a different argument when you send them home because they want that money. But when they basically get lazy and they just can't deal with the fact that you're holding them accountable to their position, they want to go home early because they do not want to do that work. And when you offer them and they see a nurse works hard. I mean, my daughter, she's a nurse, and what she goes through, I mean, you've been in the hospital. You guys have seen what they do, right? Those ladies, guys, they work 12-hour shifts. That's hard. And some of these the housekeepers, they were told, hey, we'll pay for you to be a nurse. Do you think you would think they jump on it, right? And nurses make good money. What do you think they did?
Well, they turned it down because they don't want their eyes are cast down on the path of least resistance.
The quote was, no, that's a lot of work. You may make the $40 an hour, but they're on their feet. You see what those nurses do all day? Oh, no. It was, girl, I'm not doing that. I need to find me. You know what I want to do is physical rehab. Those guys, they don't do anything and they get paid. That was the quote. And those physical therapists, they work their butts off. That's hard work getting those people.
That's really hard.
But you have to go to school for that, too.
Yes, same thing.
Name like every muscle on the body.
But what these housekeepers see is the physical therapist in the gym. Sitting down, working with the resident, just putting cones on top of it's getting them back into where they can lift their forks. They're not seeing that that's a lot of work and to deal with these residents. They're just seeing that physical therapist sit on their butt, and that's what they want to do. And that gets back to where I'll get into the entitlement. And then when you want to write these people up, oh, my Lord, you can't even try that. It goes to the union, the grievance, and before you can do that, I go back to the human resources. So it has completely changed to nowadays to where in the corporate world, the human resources literally is a corporate union that's acting on, and the middle manager is literally just that, middle manager. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
I guess my question is, how do you get by that when you're held and your pay could be slapped if you just write somebody up, if you caught them sleeping on the job?
You got to change the culture. This is my point of view. How do you change the
culture when you human resources?
It's philosophical. I see the problem as a union mentality. They think they're owed a job instead of having to earn a job.
DJ, I did not read the Fountainhead.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's like what someone would say. Like if some people don't understand even what philosophical means.
Oh,
that's why I tried to explain it to where you're not owed a job. You're not owed a job. You have to earn it. Sure. I mean, the only thing you're owed is that salary for the 8 hours you worked or the 2 weeks you worked, whatever increment we're talking about. You're not guaranteed anything beyond that. You show up the next day, you work that day, you're owed pay for that day. You're not owed a job. You must earn your job. And in earning your job, you then earn promotions. No. And in earning your promotions, you then earn pay raises. That's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant.
And that's what the union has done. They have protected. I mean, I'm going back to when this is a good friend of mine who was working in Hardee's at the time. It was Burger Shop at the time. He was on fries, and he had another buddy on the other fry. All right. the guy would go out and take a cigarette break every 15 minutes. Well, my buddy went up to the manager and said, fire that guy, pay me half his salary, and I'll never go out and all the stuff will get done because I'm doing all his work anyways. Couldn't do that because they had to, and what he had an alcohol problem. The guy was always going out. We had to rehab him. We have to give him a chance to do better. Now, that's where the union has come in into where you can't, I mean, I've heard horror stories, I'm sure you have too, where the automotive guys are sleeping in the back. I mean, come on, what's that all about? I mean, sleeping on the job, that's automatic fireable offense. I mean, we have cameras in our institution, and even if they're on camera, we can't say, all we can do is, you can suspend them.
See, that's the mentality of I'm owed a job. I don't have to earn it. But before I forget, shame on you for not reading The Fountainhead.
I don't think he was serious.
I was acting a character.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He was just.
I'm halfway through it. I kind of into it, but I have read a little bit of it.
But going back to where the employees today, it's like you said, they don't know that when they come today, they have to earn that job for tomorrow. It's not owed to them tomorrow. I would like to have someone come onto our podcast and say, no, that job is mine. Even if I come in tomorrow and I don't do a darn thing, and I sit in the employee lounge for the whole 8 hours, that job is mine. And you still got to pay me 8 hours.
What else is part of this problem is when you evaluate, this is, I say, is a management problem, it's reinforcing that attitude. When you evaluate someone and they do a bad job and you either reassign them or just keep them along and don't get rid of them, you are reinforcing to them, I'm owed that job. If management would stand up and be humans, or I would say men, and fire them when they're necessary, and doing all the paperwork you're talking about, but get rid of them when they are bad, that would be the first step in changing the climate. When you write someone up and say, you did this wrong, whatever it may be, you did X wrong, and they continue to do X wrong, and you keep them there, you're reinforcing to them that they are owed that job. They don't have to earn it.
And you're 100% correct. But in today's work, and I'm going since 2016, I have seen an administrator do what you just said. Somebody, I forget what they did. It was horrible, but she fired him. Do you know a week later she was walked out the door for firing that person without going through human resources? At the end, they had to bring that employee back. Now, what did that look like to all the? What did that tell
they were owed the
other
job. That's my point. So this is a human resources problem as well.
That person that you're saying, that good manager, that's tough to find because you're walking on glass.
I said management, and including in management is human resources. Yes, absolutely. Human resources. I called it a corporate union for a reason. Human resources is reinforcing this mentality that they don't have to earn their job, that is owed to them. If they would stand up on principle, and I've said this from the beginning of my podcast, that principle matters, pragmatism doesn't. These people are being pragmatic. They think the end justifies the means. If it's a human body, if it's warm-blooded, that's all that matters.
So there's principalities involved.
We're going back to Fridays now. Now we would have seen Fridays. Do you know what that is? Do you know Fridays, the movie?
Oh, yeah.
That was a quote
We
from
ain't got
Fridays.
no jobs.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. But you're right. It gets back into the entitlement. But we're in that to where our generation, they feel that they don't have to earn the job. That the second they walk in, they have to apply for it. But once they walk in and they're offered the interview, it's their job. So you're right. It's a culture change, but we're heading down a path that is just very dangerous to where it's not going to be an easy job to be a manager because unless you're the corporate level. Anything below corporate, between the corporation and the employees, the service line, you're in the middle.
Well, we need to find the Hank Gardens, period. That's what will take it. The ones that will stand up and do the right thing
we could
at
do a
the
whole
right
show
time.
on the fact that would that person even last in today's.
Yes, it would.
Who are the Hank Gardens today right now? There's got to be a couple out there. Who are they?
It's called Steve Jobs. He didn't take any crap.
He's dead.
I gave you an example of in today's world.
See, I don't know too much about Job. Was he, through his whole progression, was he derailed by the government? Any setbacks?
No, he was derailed by his own corporation, his own board of directors. They fired him and then brought him back. And then when he brought him back, that's when he did his the Apple really took off.
They fired him. So that's what I thought. They kind of came in and took over. I mean, that
But
right
he
there
didn't
in
take.
itself.
He was a motivational. He didn't take it. If you were not there aligned with the philosophy of Apple,
You were
you're
out.
gone.
Now,
That's what we
okay.
need. That's why I brought up Steve Jobs.
Good point on Ryan. He has since passed. Today, living. Who's out there that's hankering Dagny? Who's out there?
That doesn't mean we shouldn't shoot
I
for
get
that
that.
ideal.
But, that's the whole point. I think that we've driven in our younger generation has been from what you had said, indoctrinated, that they would never ever even think of acting like a Dagny or a Hank Reelden. It's gotten to that point to where I guess the paradigm has shifted to where you don't have those kind of philosophies out there to where it's production is rewarded, producers are rewarded. That's just opposite thinking now to where you can sit on the couch and I can get my check. So I would agree with you, but who is Dagny Taggart of today?
Well, entrepreneurs, you could always look at that. I don't know
But
if
something.
that's-
I want the
agree.
one like the Hank Reardens out there, the ones that what you're saying aren't going to go to the stock market, are going to stand on their own. That just isn't YouTube. They won't let you do that if you're not aligned with YouTube. Correct?
But
to monetize,
okay, the
get
solution to
shunned.
that is don't go on YouTube. Start your own version of YouTube. Why do you have to bow to YouTube if you're against them?
I completely
If they're going to
agree
shut
with
you
that,
down, then
but
move
what I'm
on.
finding though, the government has a way of finding the ones that aren't going along with them and making it harder for them. Now, you got to be strong. I get it, but that makes a lot of people. Most of our culture today is weak, not strong-minded. So that's just not going to. It's not going to work.
Well, then I guess it goes back to Atlas Shrugged. You got to do it and shrug. Let the world crash because
That's
it's
the point
not.
where we're at right now. Because where it's going to right now, our kids think that they're owed a job, and to change it is just that. Check their philosophical base principles and understand that it's earned. Until then, well, I don't know what to say because we're going down a very dangerous path with entitlement of jobs. That you owe me this work, and when I get here, I can sit here and, oh, by the way, you owe me that check still. Could you imagine back in, what would Grandpa say if someone did something on the farm? That was unheard of. But the culture was different.
Our grandpa would have used his fists
Well, I think
to make sure you got the work done.
we heard stories that when our uncles didn't feed the chickens or the animals, what happened to them when they were eating breakfast?
They got beat. And they
Not
wouldn't
beat,
eat.
but that their food was pulled away
Yeah,
and
they
said, you
wouldn't
don't
eat.
eat until
They wouldn't eat.
the chickens. I mean, you do that today. They're calling the state child endangerment. It's a whole.
Where are my chicken nuggets?
I think it's what I've always said. The key is philosophy. Had we been if we were a better philosophical culture, a better philosophical climate, these problems wouldn't happen. Look at you even brought up the Fountainhead and no one another me. Why not? And I don't just read the Fountainhead. Why aren't they reading philosophy? It's too hard.
Is it too hard?
How could I?
I can't
and
understand
philosophy
that.
teaches
I
you
don't
to
get it.
think for yourself. That is the ultimate benefit for philosophy.
It's the hardest thing to do.
I think thinking is the easiest thing to do, and philosophy gives you the guide to it. What the hardest thing to do, I think, is to read some of those blowhard philosophers. But it doesn't matter. It gives you the key. It gives you access to be able to think for yourself. And had we had more thinkers, this problem wouldn't be here today.
Well, to wrap up this episode, I'd like to invite anyone who thinks that they're entitled to a position, please give us a shout, text us, email us, come to the website, and we'd like to invite you as a guest so we can talk about this to see the other point of view because I really don't understand it. Maybe someone can come in and enlighten me. So with that, I'd like to end this podcast.
Well, let's tell you how to get a hold of us. Our website is changeofreasonspodcast.com. Our email is changeofreasonpodcast@yahoo. And this is the Change of Reason podcast. How can anyone be enlightened when the truth is so poorly lit?